Welcome back to Crime Chats. Tiny room, microphone, endless crimes.
Yeah! In our second Epstein episode, Hillary is going to be doing a solo episode all about Epstein's legal troubles. His first brush with the law, his New York arrest in 2019, and that non-prosecution agreement that I don't think anybody agrees with, and Operation Leap Year. So, buckle up.
So we are going to get into the whole investigative situation of the Jeffrey Epstein conundrum. Where did it all go wrong for Epstein? He was sitting pretty, and then all of a sudden his name is everywhere, and not for good reasons. So we, the world, mostly see 2005 as the beginning of the end for Mr. Epstein, when the Palm Beach Police Department start delving into the Epstein operation. But there is a 2001 case that never really got a lot of light. So let's give that a little bit of padding here before we jump into the more commonly known 2005 investigation. So there was a student at the local community college, I believe, in Florida, in Palm Beach, Florida, where there was, this student, this girl, this young woman, made an outcry against Epstein to Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Ryder, and maybe not to him, but to his department, that she had been propositioned, I guess we'll use the word, by Epstein and his cohorts. A woman came to her and offered her money to do secretarial work, and she was like, "No, I'm good." And she goes, "What about for $200? And then this young woman was like, "Okay." So she agreed to do secretarial work for Jeffrey Epstein and his colleagues. But then when she got to the estate, it was not anything that she had expected. There were a lot of very lewd acts happening around, like a lot of just kind of naked people hanging out and doing things. And then she was soon propositioned to engage in those things as well. And she was like, "Nope, I'm out." And she was offered money to do those things, all that kind of stuff. So she was like, "No, I don't want to do that." And so she reported it to the police in Palm Beach, Florida. And they just kind of looked into it, and then nothing ever came of it. It got pushed under the rug. So there's that one. And then we jump forward to 2004, where there's a Palm Beach Police Department tip that comes in that there are a bunch of young women, they're teenagers, coming and going quite frequently from Epstein's home. So Palm Beach PD does a little bit of scouring and looking and watching and doing things, and then, out of nowhere, there's a $90,000 donation to the PBPD, Palm Beach Police Department, on December 14th in 2004. And then that one goes away too. That tip. That's like, "Oh, no, it's fine. He's great. He's a great guy. Look at him donating to the police department." But when you look at it from an outsider's perspective, wasn't that too out of the blue, because Epstein had donated before to the Palm Beach Police Scholarship Fund, which is a scholarship that is, quote, awarded based on academic achievement, leadership qualities, and community involvement, ensuring that the children of those who serve and protect us have the opportunity to pursue and achieve their academic aspirations, end quote. That's from the Palm Beach Police and Fire Foundation. So he had donated before to them, so it's not that big a surprise that he's donating more now that there's an allegation of prostitution, elicitation. I mean, I'm being very sarcastic right now because I think it's definitely connected, but whether they did or not, it got pushed under the rug. Then we jump to 2005. So this is the more widely accepted beginning to Epstein's downfall. In March of 2005, Palm Beach Police Department is contacted by a woman who claims that her 14-year-old stepdaughter was taken to Epstein's mansion by another teenage girl and paid to massage Epstein in only her underwear. So, Palm Beach PD begins an investigation into Epstein. They monitor his Palm Beach home. They're starting to see that pattern of young girls in and out of his house, identifying potential victims. 35 of these individuals were girls under 18, and when they were spoken to, they had very similar stories to that 14-year-old stepdaughter of the original woman who called in. And that similar story is, the one of being paid hundreds of dollars for sexual or sensual massages for Epstein. And some of them even said Epstein would encourage them to recruit more girls by paying them bonuses or recruiting bonuses, stipends kind of thing for like $200 for each new girl they brought him. Or they brought to massage him, I should say. This is all seen very clearly on one of the Epstein files I delved into. It's a pretty lengthy one, but there's a lot of, it's 100 pages. This one's a 100-page file document. It outlines a lot of the text messages and phone calls between Epstein and his co-conspirators. And these Jane Does, these underage girls, and what he was asking of them or requesting of them, and how he would get his private jet and take them to his private island or to his ranch in New Mexico or to New York, and he would promise them great and grand things and buy them lingerie. They're teenagers. Some of them even had proof of promising through these text messages. You can see it through the court documents here. He would buy them lingerie or vibrators or other sexual items. And these are underage individuals. These are kids, teenagers. And he's giving these things or promising these things anyways. And you can see them clearly in the text messages being sent to and from Mr. Epstein, his cohorts, and these teenagers. So that is a big chunk of the evidence for the 2005 arrest. And what happens is you start to see a very clear pattern. And so you've got a recruitment network, like a pyramid scheme situation that has a lot of euphemisms and code words and things like that. So you've got people that work with and for Epstein, adults, like these are proven court-recorded, court-documented names. We've got Sarah Kellen and Ghislaine Maxwell. And then you've got these ladies, these women, going to recruit teenage girls, typically from the local high schools, such as Palm Beach Lakes and Forest Hill High, going and quote, referring other teenagers so they could get more money, these girls. And so that's where your kind of pyramid scheme situation comes in. And then they have this massage euphemism. So anywhere you look at handwritten notes in these Epstein files and you see massage appointment or masseuse or this or that, that typically the investigators would kind of deduce that that word massage was standard code for sexual encounters. So victims were often told by Epstein to bring a friend, right? Their referral next time for more money, for a new massage or new masseuse would get them more money. And they're teenagers. Of course they want money. They don't understand. Okay, not my opinion time. So the scope of all of this, by the end of this police department probe, the Palm Beach Police Department had identified over 30 victims. So again, you can look at all of that in the document that we're putting on in our case notes for this one. Physical evidence were those massage logs, payment records, surveillance footage. They even found out that Epstein had sent flowers to a student at one of the high schools to congratulate her at one of her plays that she was in. And it's just, it's sickening to me, opinion time, because it shows how involved the Epstein group was in this community of teenage girls. And they knew when this girl, theater kid was going to be performing, and they're like, oh, we see you. Look at how beautiful these flowers are for you. I don't know. It's just, it makes me cringe in a very gross way. So then you have going into 2006, the Palm Beach PD wrote up their probable cause affidavit to go charge Epstein with with multiple counts of unlawful sexual activity with a minor. But conflicts come up because Mr. State Attorney Barry Kirscher, I don't know how to say his name. Sorry. He was like, you know what? We're going to send this to the grand jury, not just file the charges. Why did he do that? We can only guess. My thoughts here are because these charges are so gross in terms of like large, not gross. They're icky too, but because these charges were so big, he was like, this needs a big jury, like a big in terms of legal jury. And that's my guess. So that it was sent to a grand jury, and July 19th, 2006, grand jury indicts Epstein on only one count of felony solicitation of prostitution. I don't understand that, but that's what it is. So he's indicted on one count of felony solicitation of prostitution, July 19th, 2006. Then you have this situation with Chief Ryder. Chief Ryder, Michael Ryder, is the police chief of Palm Beach Police Department at the time. He is very upset with the outcome because he's like, you're giving him special treatment. He's not having to pay for what he's done. Why did he get to skip a trial of jury of his peers, that kind of thing? Why did he go straight to just FBI grand jury situation? Why did he get off on only one count? What, all this stuff. He was not happy. So this, he referred this whole thing because he had like this outrage about the grand jury's indictment of only one, all that stuff. So it was then sent to FBI in West Palm Beach, their headquarters there, and triggered the federal investigation known as, quote, Operation Leap Year, end quote. Fun name. So all of that was happening 2005 and halfway through 2006. So what is Operation Leap Year? Well, we have Palm Beach Police Department Chief Michael Ryder was, again, unhappy with how things ended in the grand jury trial. And so he just walked his happy little self over to Palm Beach branch of the FBI in late 2006, and he started this operation, Operation Leap Year. What was the objective? Well, FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office sought to build a federal case against everybody involved right now under the Mann Act, MANN, which is transporting minors across state lines for immoral purposes. So think trafficking. So they are trying to, I guess, like take the wool from over our eyes, kind of thing, are being everybody who's falling for Epstein and whomever else is under his spell or his thumb, to see this is wrong. Look at what he's doing. He can't just get off with such an easy, light sentence. And then what was the scale of this operation? Well, you have the federal agents beginning to interview victims across states, Florida, New York, New Mexico, where he has homes and residences and properties. He also has his private island, and he has his private jet, the Lolita Express. So they are uncovering a pattern of Epstein flying girls on his private jet between these properties. So we have now that traveling charge. So travel to engage in illicit sexual conduct. And that's another one of the charges on his docket. So he goes quite extensively across state lines, which again is a federal thing. It's not a state thing to me, my opinion. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a professional here. My brain, you're going across the country and internationally, if you have your own private island, Florida, New York, New Mexico, literally complete opposite ends of our country, right? It's not a state thing. So the corroboration, by 2007, federal investigators had a 53-page draft indictment ready. It detailed a massive conspiracy involving multiple recruiters and dozens of victims. So Operation Leap Year was designed to be the hammer that would supersede, so completely overshadow the weak state charges, which to me says duh. However, this is where the non-prosecution agreement intervened. Yay. So just as the federal grand jury was heating up, Epstein's lawyers were like, we're going to negotiate this secret NPA with Mr. Acosta. And the NPA effectively killed Operation Leap Year by granting Epstein federal immunity in exchange for his state guilty plea. So the FBI was essentially told to stand down, and the 53-page indictment was shelved for over a decade. Tell me how that makes sense. Okay, so what was the NPA, the non-prosecution agreement? Well, it was an agreement between Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys and the United States Attorney's Office, USAO. Why did it happen and what was it? Well, let's talk about what it was first before we talk about why it was. What it was. The NPA, according to the DOJ, we're going to have a alphabet soup here. I'll have some acronyms for you because I had to have them written down for myself. The DOJ is the Department of Justice. According to the DOJ, there's a 348-page report. So according to the DOJ's 348-page report, the NPA was an agreement between Epstein's attorneys and the United States Attorney's Office, the USAO, which are the prosecutors, the ones going against Epstein, for all the alleged and investigated things against him, which we either have or will have already explained and gotten into in this whole deep dive on him this month of March 2026. So according to what we already have talked about, is just in this episode alone, Jeffrey Epstein has already been investigated on the 14-year-old girl complaining to her parents that Epstein paid her for a massage while she was in her underwear. That was kind of the can opening of the whole thing on him that put a target on him, I guess we can say. And then everything just kind of came from that. Now, that investigation led to other things. Then the whole 2005, 2006 legal trouble happens. And then we have several weeks of the prosecution, the USAO, United States Attorney's Office, going into prosecuting him, Epstein, and they're looking at all these police records and notes and things. What is interesting to me is the FBI and the assistant U.S. attorney, under the supervision of the then U.S. attorney Alexander Acosta, had a huge memorandum document case file that had evidence they'd assembled, or they got together in support of the charges against Epstein, that these girls were being trafficked ultimately, and they're underage, right? All of these things. And then the United States Attorney's Office, the prosecution, was like, you know what? We're going to offer you a plea deal. We're going to offer you a plea deal. And we're going to say, hey, look, we're going to end the investigation. Look, if you, Mr. Epstein, just plead guilty to the state charges. Remember, the state charges were those in 2005 and 2006, which she was already indicted for, but then everybody wasn't happy about. Anyways, so they're like, okay, just plead guilty to those. Agree to serve your minimum 2 years in jail, in prison. You got to register as a sex offender. And, quote, agree to a mechanism through which victims could obtain monetary damages, end quote. That's from the document, the 348-page document. So the United States Attorney's Office continued to meet with Epstein's attorneys, and they go back and forth, and then they sign this NPA, September 24th, 2007. So what did it do? Epstein, okay, well, the NPA made sure that he did those things. He pled guilty to the state charges, which were, quote, the procurement of minors to engage in prostitution, quote, end quote. So that's a violation, clearly, of Florida law. And he'd have to register as a sex offender, serve time in jail. Now, what I'm a little is not at all what I mean, but I'm a little concerned. What I'm annoyed with, I can't find the right adjective here to describe my feelings about this. It's so confusing. I don't understand why this was ever done. I mean, we have hindsight, right? We understand we don't understand. It's such an atrocious, overwhelming case, but the NPA made sure that Epstein served 18 months in county jail. 18 months. And then he had to also serve 12 months of community control, which is like house arrest, or you have some kind of monitoring device on you where you can't leave. Well, that's nice, because he has mansions and private islands and ranches and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that's got to be just awful for him. Anyways, sorry. I'm trying to leave my opinions out of this. It's hard. It's really hard. So I don't understand why prosecution, the USAO, I don't understand that. And maybe we will later when we delve deeper into it. Right now, I don't. Do you? Well, let's move on a tiny bit, because we're still talking about NPA. there's more that it just doesn't make sense in a legal sense why things were done the way they were, or contrary, why they weren't done the way they should have been. So he had to serve his time, his 18 months, then 12 months of house arrest. Then the victims were supposed to be getting monetary support or damages because of what had happened to them, right? He also was supposed to have... Okay, well, hold on. Pause that, because on the other end of it, what was he like? There's a deal, right? So he's supposed to do all this. Well, then what's he going to get out of it? Like I had a deal. So the prosecution was like, look. So if you do this for us, Mr. Epstein, we won't prosecute you federally. So it'll just stay in Florida. It'll just stay here. And it'll just be you. We won't bring up any of your partners, right? No co-conspirators, no potential co-conspirators. It's just you, right? Okay, great, I guess. I don't know why that would have been a deal for him. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think in terms of a criminal mastermind. A bad guy here. If I did something truly atrocious, like this, right? Like this whole thing, and I had partners in crime, but I was given a deal, and part of that deal was that my partners would not go down with me, and that was supposed to be a perk of the deal. What would be alluring to me about that? So I'm trying to think in that sense. And this is me hypothetically thinking out loud. I'm thinking, okay, if my partner in crime didn't go down, maybe they could continue milking the crime cow. I don't know. And then I'll just serve my time. And when I get out, I can go back to doing the things. I'm not sure. So maybe that was something that I have no idea. That's just kind of my thought process here. I don't know why that would have been a perk other than maybe that. Okay. So the big kicker here for me, other than the complete disrespectful amount of time that he was required to serve, was that victims were not even told about this whole deal. They weren't aware of it. They weren't consulted. They weren't informed. Nothing. That is the biggest, punch in the gut to any victim of any crime, that your abuser, the criminal of the case where you are the victim, is getting offered a plea deal to get a lesser sentence or no sentence. I mean, depending on what it is, without even knowing about it. You don't even know about it. And that one was just eesh. So in PA, why did the United States Attorney's Office, the prosecution, why did they do this? What was it? What were they going to get out of it? I have 3 kind of main points, and for the most part, they come from, again, much later accounts. So 2020 hindsight, situations, and we're looking into statements made by Alex Acosta, who was, again, the then U.S. attorney at that time of this whole thing going down 2005, 2006, 2007. So one of the things he's saying now, like 2025, he was saying about that time, he was like, he says it's, quote, a crapshoot, based on, he was in an interview with, or during the 2025 House Oversight Committee interview is when this is kind of coming out. So he was saying essentially it was about victim reliability, and it was a guaranteed win for them, the prosecution. So they were saying, because the victims had inconsistent stories or unreliable background kind of records and stuff, they didn't stand up as strongly in court as Epstein did, because he had this like dream team, high-powered defense team that would just completely run circles around them kind of thing, which is so sad. But so you can lie really well in court, apparently. Opinion time, Hillary. This is opinion time. And get away with crap. Or, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll stop. I just won't even finish the sentence because this is not about my opinion. This is supposed to be about court records. Okay, so Alex Costa arguing that, yes, it was just a poor, honestly, that it just wasn't good. It just wasn't a good thing because you had a lot of victims, obviously, but they were young, possibly. They didn't have strong recollection of what happened, or they were scared. I mean, all these kinds of things. It was inconsistent because of those things, and Epstein knew what he was doing, and he had really good defense team people. So in the same interview with Alex Acosta, he was saying that they believe that by forcing Epstein to plead guilty to state charges, they were at least guaranteeing he would go to jail, register as a sex offender, pay restitution. So he was saying, well, if we could at least get him on something, he'd be on the record. He'd be in the spotlight badly, kind of thing. So they're thinking, well, at least a short sentence is better than no sentence, and risking him walking free if the federal trial failed because of, the weak stories of inconsistent victims, which is just really sad. So then that's number one. That is him. Then we have number two, the defense's jurisdictional pressure. So Epstein didn't just have lawyers. Again, he had this like awesome dream team. He was a billionaire. He had lawyers like Ellen Dershowitz and Ken Starr, who really beautifully reframed his narrative we had this quote state matter, so it was saying we don't need to waste your time, federal courts. This is quote quintessentially a state matter, end quote, and that the federal intervention was just overreach, all that kind of stuff. We don't need to do that. And of course, they would probably do they did a much better job at wording that and stuff, because that's their job. Then it was a global situation or solution. They pressured the United States Attorney's Office to resolve the matter globally, so Epstein wouldn't face rolling indictments across different jurisdictions. That part I don't quite understand, because, I mean, if he's guilty, okay, do it. If he's not guilty, then that'll show up too. I don't understand this thought process of, we don't want to waste the time of the courts. It's not a waste of time. It's using the court system as it's meant to be used to prove innocence or guilt. I don't know. So I don't like that. I don't like the way they think there. That's my opinion. And then finally, the third point is the poor judgment finding. So the DOJ, the Department of Justice Office of Professional Responsibility, this is that 348-page report I was telling you about. This is them. So they investigated the handling of the case. Their conclusions were like, yes, but technical misconduct. They didn't find evidence of improper favors or bribery. There was extreme poor judgment. They did conclude that Mr. Acosta, who again was the U.S. attorney at the time for FBI, right? He definitely exercised poor judgment because the NPA was a flawed mechanism. That's quote, flawed mechanism that failed to satisfy the federal interest. Yeah. See, that's where I was talking about, that it does matter. It matters if he's guilty, he needs to go to jail. If he's not guilty, it needs to be seen in court. Prove it one way or the other. Prove it. And then, of course, the secrecy issue, perhaps the most unfathomable part, was the decision to keep the NPA secret from the victims. Yes. A federal judge later ruled that this one part that I'm just like complete sucker punch to the gut, the decision to keep the NPA secret from the victims, just, it violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. But because the deal was already signed and no federal charges were pending, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals eventually ruled the victims couldn't overturn it. I think that in itself is sickening. That also leads to quite a few civil court suits. And a lot of the victims that we will talk about in a couple of weeks sued Epstein et al., ETAL et al., because of a lot of this right here, the poor judgment, the misconduct, the failed professionalism, all of this stuff. They didn't have a chance to view this, to see their day in court, kind of thing. It was just I don't have any other words. Clearly, I'm fumbling now because I'm so disgusted, so saddened by this failure of our court system. And clearly, I mean, yes, it's been 20 years. Hopefully we've gotten better. Sometimes we definitely haven't, but this was a huge, it was just bad. It was just bad. I'll leave it there for me. That's my opinion. It was just bad. That was the NPA. In a nutshell, it granted immunity to Epstein and to any potential co-conspirators. He was to serve 18 months in county jail, but he only served 13 months. Opted on work release, which was just 12 hours a day at his office. And then the victims were intentionally kept in the dark until the deal was done, solved, signed. Okay, so we have a few more events, and then we'll kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive in Jeffrey Epstein. So we had 2001, 2004, 2005, 2006, and now we're going to jump to July 2019 to discuss very briefly his arrest in New York City. We're going to talk about his indictment in New York, the charges, bail hearing, and then some interesting discussions of the jail conditions of where he was. So, July 2019, Epstein is arrested at the Teterboro Airport. I think I'm saying that right. In New Jersey. I mean, New York City, New Jersey, it's kind of there. New Jersey, whatever. After he had been visiting Paris. So he comes back on his private jet and he's taken down. Why? 2019 from 2006? What happened? Well, you have the Miami Herald, bless them, they have an investigative series called the Perversion of Justice. There we go. And they had done a whole story on him, and it kind of sparked a desire, I guess, to look at it from a fresh perspective by New York's team of investigators. So the SDNY go in and look at all of this mess of the court and the state and the federal and the this and the that, and they were like, hey, you know what? We're not bound by that non-prosecution agreement. That's a Florida thing. That is a state thing. So they're different. They're in a different federal district, and the crimes in New York were distinct to New York. So they are able to indict Jeffrey Epstein on a long-running conspiracy from 2002 to 2005, really carefully paralleling the years covered in the original Palm Beach investigation to show the federal interest was never completely satisfied. It wasn't, they didn't do a good job, obviously, and for whatever reasons we won't get into right now, but they were like, we will indict him, we will charge him with what he did in New York, and we're going to show you, country people, whoever's in charge of the whole federal issues, it is related to Florida's, without saying that, right? Because then they'll be dealing with the non-prosecution agreement, but they're gonna connect it based on the dates, based on the flight logs, based on the text messages and the MySpace messages and all these things. It goes hand in hand, so it is federal. And so they do that with the indictment in New York, in the New York district. And at the same time, FBI agents are raiding his Manhattan mansion. Interesting. So that Miami Herald investigative piece really just lit a fire under everybody to stop being so complacent with this guy. And in this raid of Epstein's $77 million Manhattan mansion, they find a lot of really interesting things, at least interesting to me. Maybe not to a billionaire, but I'm not a billionaire, I can't relate. They find, quote, piles of cash, end quote, which, great for him. There are loose diamonds, so like not cut or ready to be in a ring or things like that. They're just loose diamonds. And a fake Austrian passport, which has a interestingly suspicious background. So this happens. He gets indicted in New York. The charges, he's got 2 primary federal counts now. Count 1, sex trafficking conspiracy, which means he allegedly worked with his employees and associates to recruit and transport girls for sex. Then count 2, sex trafficking of minors. So this specifically focused on the, quote, recruitment, enticing, and harboring, end quote, of girls as young as 14 for sexual acts in exchange for cash. So the wording of those counts, those allegations, the indictment there, those are very important because you have the cash, you have the recruitment, you have the enticement, you have the age. Very important. And then you have this like pyramid scheme evidence kind of stuff. You have these charges are detailing how Epstein paid victims to recruit other girls, creating a self-sustaining network of abuse. So the more you bring to me, the more money you get. And then if they bring more, then you get more. It's this whole pyramid scheme thing, which we talked about last week when Lisa brought up, Epstein's whole upbringing. So kind of call back to us talking about pyramid schemes. Now, that's how he got arrested in New York. Let's talk about the bail hearing, July 18th, 2019. We have the defense, Epstein's team, proposing $100 million bail package, offering his Manhattan mansion as collateral and suggesting a 24/7 private armed guard at his expense. He'll pay for his own watchdog, basically, at the court's choosing. Like they'll choose someone to follow him, he'll pay for it. But Judge Richard Berman denies his bail, calling the proposal, quote, irredeemably inadequate, end quote. So why? Why did the judge say that? Why did he deny? Well, the judge is citing Epstein's extraordinary wealth, his private jets, the fake passport, as proof he was a significant flight risk and a danger to the community. I would even proffer a danger to the world because of his ability to get anywhere he darn well pleases with his own means. But that's my opinion. Now he's denied bail. He goes to jail. He's held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, in Lower Manhattan. This is an interesting little aside, I guess. This facility, the MCC, is often described as, quote, medieval due to its deteriorating conditions, end quote. I'm curious what that means. So I would have loved to see some, today photos of it, but it was eventually demolished. So we can't see that right now. He was placed in the special housing unit for high-profile inmates. I hate this. Opinion time with Hillary. People who do atrocious things should not get special treatment. It doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have, how pretty you are. If you've done something bad, you go with the bad guys. That's my opinion. Done with that. Okay. He allegedly, after a suspected suicide attempt on July 23rd, he was briefly put on suicide watch, but removed just days before his death. Curious why? Don't know. So we have some failures to discuss. We're still talking about the conditions at MCC. On the night of his death, August 10th, 2019, guards failed to perform the required 30-minute checks. Why? Don't know. And his cellmate had been transferred out the day before, leaving him alone. Also a violation of protocol. Why? Don't know. So, what does that lead to? The systematic failures at this facility, the MCC, during his stay were so severe that even a jail, even a place for bad guys, for criminals, right? The Department of Justice closed the facility entirely in 2021, so it is no longer accepting new applicants, right? I find that really interesting. I don't know why people don't do their jobs when they're supposed to. That's just, I don't know. I don't understand that part. But if you're supposed to check on people, prisoners every 30 minutes, check on prisoners every 30 minutes. That's your job. That's your job. If he's on a suicide watch, he shouldn't be left alone. End of story. Anyways, okay. So, the fake passport. This fake passport. Remember, it was found when the FBI raided Epstein's $77 million Upper East Side mansion in Manhattan in 2019, July. Now, it's an interesting story because of what the defense claims here. On the passport, country of issue is Austria. Date of issue, 1980s. Long expired by 2019 when he's arrested, right? The name on this passport, well, it was Epstein's photo, but it wasn't his name. Doesn't really tell us whose name it was, so that's interesting. But it is his picture. It listed his place of residence as Saudi Arabia. So, again, country of issue, Austria. Place of residence, Saudi Arabia. So, the defense claims he had it for, quote, hijacking protection, end quote. Yeah, figure that one out. So when the prosecutors were presenting this as evidence against Epstein and his, when they were presenting it as evidence of his intent to flee or ability to flee, his legal team, remember, he has real big wigs here. He's got like Martin Weinberg, Reed Weingarten, these big names. They're offering a very specific and quite creative explanation. They're saying the passport was given to Epstein by a friend in the 1980s. It's still illegal, but okay, if that's true. They're saying, well, during that era, there were several high-profile Middle Eastern aircraft hijackings, and affluent Jewish Americans were informally advised by security experts to carry identification with non-Jewish names to avoid being targeted by terrorists if their plane was taken over. Okay. They also insisted that he never actually used it. Okay. But the prosecution was like, okay. Even if all of what you just said before was true and accurate and realistic and real, the passport has stamps showing entry into multiple countries like France, Spain, UK, and Saudi Arabia during the 80s. So you just lied and you got caught. So why did that even matter? Well, that was the smoking gun, basically, for the Judge Richard Berman. That is what would have allowed Epstein to move all over the entire world, right? Judge Berman says this undermines two of the defense's main arguments, that he is a law-abiding citizen. So defense argues that Epstein has been a model citizen since 2008. Judge notes that keeping a fraudulent foreign passport in a safe, even an old one, didn't exactly scream law-abiding. It also it undermines that he's a flight risk, right? So combined with his private jets and massive liquid assets like the loose diamonds and the cash hanging around, the passport proved Epstein had the means and the mindset to assume a new identity and disappear anywhere in the world globally. The residence listing of Saudi Arabia added a layer of mystery that still fuels research today. While Epstein had documented business ties to various international figures, the specific choice of Saudi Arabia on a fake Austrian passport means, I don't know, it's weird. It's an odd personal thing. I don't know. So it's a little mysterious and just, we don't know. So the defense is framing the fake passport as a safety tool for Jewish people, Jewish men traveling during a time of international terrorism. Prosecution framed it as the escape kit for a career manipulator. Yeah. What do you think?